Okay, so get ready for this deep dive. We've got some seriously impressive stories to unpack today. I'm talking about people who faced incredible challenges, and instead of just, getting back on their feet, they used those experiences to achieve amazing things. We're talking mountain climbers, tennis stars, even a groundbreaking teacher from way back in the 19th century.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable, isn't it? What really jumps out at me is how these stories, well, each one is unique, of course, all kind of touch on this incredible human capacity for resilience. It's like in the face of adversity, some people don't just bounce back. They somehow use it to propel themselves forward.
Yeah, like a slingshot effect almost.
Exactly.
And speaking of launching into greatness, one thing that really struck me was how many of these individuals were already super passionate about their fields at a young age. Like we're talking kids and teenagers already dreaming big time. Like Santosh Yadav, youngest woman to conquer Everest.
Yeah.
She was already hooked on mountaineering as a teenager.
It's amazing, isn't it, how early passions can shape a whole life's trajectory. And it's often more than just the individual's drive. Supportive environments play a huge role, too.
Oh, absolutely.
Think about young Purna Malavath climbing Everest at just 13. That kind of achievement doesn't just happen on its own.
No way. It really makes you think about the impact of encouragement and support.
Mm.
You know, like I was obsessed with dinosaurs as a kid, totally thought I'd be a paleontologist. But honestly, my parents encouraging that, taking me to museums, getting me books that kept that fire burning.
Exactly. It's all about nurturing that spark. But sometimes, that spark ignites in the face of some pretty incredible hardship. Take Maria Sharapova.
Mm.
To train in the U.S., she had to leave her mom behind in Siberia at just 9 years old. That takes a level of commitment that I think most adults would struggle with, to be honest.
Wow. Yeah, that's a tough choice. But it obviously paid off Wimbledon champion at 17. And speaking of overcoming obstacles, Leander Pace's journey to Olympic gold is another incredible example. This wasn't just about talent, it was about mental toughness. He was ranked way lower than his opponent in that final match.
What's interesting about Pace's story is it highlights how stressful situations can actually become like fuel for success.
Right.
This fight or flight response, it's primal, right? But for some people, like Pace's, it seems to trigger this laser focus and determination to prove themselves.
Like he channeled that pressure into power. And then what does he do? He dedicates his win to his team, acknowledging how important their support was. It's a good reminder that success is rarely a solo act.
No, absolutely. Even individual triumphs often have, well, a whole network behind them, and that support becomes even more critical when you're dealing with physical challenges. Look at Hugh Hare, the amputee mountain climber. Losing both legs to frostbite, most people would understandably give up on climbing, but Hare, he used his engineering skills to design prosthetics that not only let him walk, but actually climb again.
That's incredible. He basically turned a limitation into an opportunity for innovation. It reminds me of that saying, if life gives you lemons. Well, Hugh Hare built himself some incredible climbing gear.
Right. And what's really fascinating here is how this connects back to that theme of early passion we were talking about. Hare was already a world-class climber when the accident happened. It's like that passion became this driving force that wouldn't let him give up, even when everything changed.
It's like that passion was woven into his very being.
Speaking of powerful guiding principles, let's dive into the world of literature. You sent us Rabindranath Tagore's poem, Where the Mind is Without Fear, and wow, what a powerful piece of writing.
Tagore's poem isn't just beautiful, it's like a blueprint for a better world. Written during India's struggle for independence, it speaks to this deep yearning for freedom, not just political freedom, but intellectual and social freedom too. Yeah. It's like he's saying true freedom is about more than just breaking physical chains. It's about breaking down those walls in our minds. Those narrow domestic walls he talks about.
Right. And this idea of breaking down walls, it resonates with so many of the stories we're discussing today. Like Padiz's win, yes, it was an individual victory, but it also broke down this wall of perception. It proved that an Indian athlete could dominate on the world stage. And this idea of a world where knowledge is free, that's where the work of Savitribai Phule comes in.
Ah, yes. Savitribai Phule, India's first female teacher. Now, here's someone who truly embodies that fight for knowledge and empowerment. Imagine back in the 19th century going against societal norms to advocate for girls' education.
It's incredible. And it wasn't just about education as like a concept. Phule understood that for women, especially in her time, education was the key to unlocking real freedom. It's like she recognized that knowledge is power, and without it, women were left vulnerable and voiceless.
It's so true. It's like she was planting these seeds of change that would blossom for generations to come. And speaking of powerful women breaking barriers, the stories of Saina Newall and Sanya Mirza immediately come to mind. These athletes weren't just playing badminton and tennis, they were challenging these deeply ingrained societal expectations about what women should and shouldn't do.
Yeah, it's amazing how their journeys parallel Fool's struggle in a way. They faced pushback, had to fight for their right to compete, but they persevered. And their success isn't just about winning matches, it's about changing the game for future generations of female athletes.
Okay, so we've got these incredible stories of people defying odds, breaking barriers, achieving things that seemed impossible. It's inspiring, but it also kind of makes you wonder, how do they do it? What's the secret sauce?
Well, there's no magic formula, of course, but there are some common threads that weave through these stories. Passion, resilience, a supportive environment. These seem to be key ingredients. And what's really interesting is how often these individuals faced setbacks early on, almost like those challenges forged their strength.
So maybe it's not about avoiding hardship, but about learning to navigate it, to use it as fuel, to propel us forward. I mean, think about Maria Sharapova leaving her family at such a young age. That must have been incredibly difficult, but it clearly shaped her into the champion she became.
Exactly. It's like those early challenges, they force you to develop coping mechanisms, to tap into reserves of strength you didn't even know you had. And that resilience, it becomes the superpower that helps you overcome obstacles later in life.
That's a really powerful insight. It's almost like those early struggles are like training for the bigger challenges that life throws your way.
And speaking of training, let's shift gears a bit and talk about the role of mentorship in these success stories.
You know, it's funny. We often talk about this idea of natural talent when it comes to success. But when you really look at these stories, it becomes clear that talent is only, well, a piece of the puzzle.
Right.
It's that mix of passion, hard work, and, yeah, good mentorship that seems to really make the difference.
Oh, absolutely. Like even someone as gifted as Maria Sharapova, you can't ignore the role her dad played in her development. He was her coach, her mentor, her rock. And think about Purnamela again. She had this incredible drive, but without the guidance of her instructors at that mountaineering school, she wouldn't have been able to achieve what she did.
And mentorship isn't just about technical skills.
Yeah. Right.
It's about instilling that belief, building confidence, helping someone navigate the inevitable setbacks that come along the way. It's like that saying, it takes a village.
Yeah.
These individuals might be the ones standing on that mountaintop or holding the trophy, but they got there with the support of a whole team.
Totally. It's like they're the arrow, but the mentors are the bow, providing that direction and the force to help them reach their target.
And speaking of targets, one theme that just keeps coming up is this idea of challenging the status quo. I mean, almost all these individuals face some kind of societal expectation that they had to overcome.
Right. It's like they had to break through these invisible barriers before they could even begin to pursue their dreams. And this brings us back to Savitri-Bai Phule. Here's a woman who, back in the 1800s, was not only fighting for girls' education, but she was fighting against this whole system that told her women didn't belong in the classroom, let alone at the head of one.
Yeah, it's mind-blowing when you think about the courage it took to challenge those deeply ingrained beliefs. I mean, she faced backlash, social ostracism, even threats. And yet she and her husband kept pushing forward, opening schools, advocating for change.
Her legacy is so powerful because it shows how individual actions, even when you're up against this overwhelming opposition, can spark lasting change. It's like she planted a seed. And even though she might not have lived to see it in full bloom, that seed grew into this incredible movement for women's education that continues to this day.
It's like a ripple effect.
Yeah.
And we see those ripples in the stories of Saina Newall and Sanya Mirza, who faced, similar societal pressures, but in the world of sports.
Yeah.
Think about it. Even today, the idea of women in professional sports, especially in certain cultures, is still met with resistance.
Oh, absolutely. And their achievements, they're not just about athletic prowess. They're about challenging gender norms, inspiring young girls, proving that women can excel in any field they choose. It's like they're picking up the torch that Savitri-Bai Phule lit all those years ago and carrying it forward.
And that brings us back to that poem, Where the Mind is Without Fear. Tagore talks about this world where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way into the dreary desert sand of dead habit. It's like he's calling for this world where we break free from those limiting beliefs and traditions that hold us back, where knowledge and reason prevail.
Right, and that resonates so deeply with the stories we're discussing. Think about Leander Paetz. He wasn't just playing against his opponent in that Olympic final, he was playing against decades of expectations, of this idea that Indian athletes couldn't compete at that level. And when he won, it wasn't just a personal victory, it was a victory for a whole nation, a moment that shattered those dreary desert sands of dead habit.
Wow. That's such a powerful way to put it. It's like his win opened up this whole new realm of possibility, not just for himself, but for every aspiring athlete in India. It's like he was saying, look, we can do this. We can be champions too.
Exactly. And that's the power of these stories, right?
Yeah.
They inspire us. They challenge us to rethink our own limitations, to break free from those narrow domestic walls that Tagore talks about.
It's like they're these beacons of hope,
Yeah.
showing us what's possible when we tap into our potential and refuse to let, circumstances dictate our destiny.
And what's really amazing is that these individuals, they come from such diverse backgrounds, different fields, different generations, yet there's this common thread of resilience, this unwavering spirit that connects them all.
It's like they're all part of this human tapestry, and each thread is adding to the richness and complexity of the overall design. And what's really cool is that our listener, you're part of this tapestry too.
You got it. And that's what makes these stories so relatable. It's not about putting these individuals on a pedestal and saying, wow, they're so extraordinary, I could never be like them. It's about recognizing that same spark that drives them, that same capacity for resilience and growth, it exists within each of us.
It's like they're holding up a mirror and saying, hey, look what you're capable of. Now go out there and make your own story.
And that's what we're going to explore in the next part of our deep dive. We're going to take a closer look at the lessons we can learn from these inspiring individuals and how we can apply those lessons to our own lives, no matter what challenges we might be facing.
Welcome back to our deep dive. As we've been exploring these incredible stories, I keep thinking about that, saying the only limits are the ones we set for ourselves. It's like these individuals, they looked at those supposed limits and said, nope, I'm going further.
And it's not just about, physical limits. It's about challenging those mental barriers, those societal expectations, even those self-imposed doubts that whisper, you can't do that. What's striking is how many of these individuals face significant pushback, not just from external forces, but sometimes from within their own communities.
Yeah, absolutely. Like Savitribai Phule. Imagine the courage it took to advocate for girls' education when so many people around her believed it was wrong, and Saina Nehwal facing criticism for pursuing a career in badminton, a sport not traditionally seen as for girls. It's like they had to overcome not just obstacles, but deeply ingrained beliefs,
Right. And that's where that concept of, a growth mindset comes in. It's about believing that your abilities aren't fixed,
Yeah.
that you can learn and grow and adapt, even when you face setbacks. It's like those setbacks, instead of breaking them, they actually became fuel for their determination.
It's like what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, right? And that resilience, it seems to be this key ingredient in all of these stories. I mean, think about Hugh Hare again. He loses both legs in a climbing accident, and instead of letting that define him, he uses it as a springboard to innovate in the field of prosthetics. Talk about turning lemons into lemonade.
And what's so fascinating about Hare's story is that it highlights the interconnectedness of our passions and our challenges. His love for climbing, it fueled his scientific pursuits, and then his scientific breakthroughs allowed him to return to the sport that he loved. It's like this beautiful feedback loop.
It's like those two seemingly separate parts of his life were actually deeply intertwined, each one informing and strengthening the other. And speaking of connections, I think that's one of the biggest takeaways from this deep dive. It's not just about individual achievements, it's about how those achievements ripple outward, impacting communities, inspiring others, even shaping future generations.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like Leander Paak's winning that Olympic gold medal, yes, it was a personal triumph, but it also had this profound impact on the national psyche. It was like he was saying, hey, India, we can do this. We can compete on the world stage. And who knows how many young athletes were inspired by that moment to pick up a tennis racket or chase their own Olympic dreams.
Right. It's like that victory cracked open a door that had been closed for so long. And then you have initiatives like Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, which translates to save the daughter, educate the daughter, working to change attitudes and create opportunities for girls in India. It's like these ripples of progress building upon each other, pushing society forward.
And that's where the true power of these stories lies, right? It's not about hero worship. It's about recognizing that the same human potential that allowed these individuals to achieve great things, it exists within all of us. We all have the capacity for resilience, for growth, for making a difference in the world.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I think the question we're left with is, what will we do with that potential? How will we use these stories to inspire our own journeys? Will we be the ones to break down those narrow domestic walls in our own lives and communities?
I think Tagore offers us a really beautiful roadmap in his poem. He talks about a world where the head is held high, where words come out from the depth of truth, where tireless striving stretches its arms towards perfection. It's a call to action, an invitation to step into our own power and contribute to building a better world.
It's a reminder that we're not just passive observers in this grand narrative of human achievement. We're active participants, each with our own unique role to play. So let's embrace that challenge. Let's learn from these inspiring individuals, and let's go out there and create our own stories of triumph, of resilience, of making a difference in the world.
Today's been a journey through some remarkable heights of human achievement. We've explored the power of passion, the importance of resilience, the impact of mentorship, and the lasting legacy of those who dare to challenge the status quo. The takeaway here is this: within each of us lies the potential for greatness. Embrace those passions, cultivate your strengths, and never stop striving for a world where every mind is without fear.
Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep reaching for the top.